Hey guys, Mr. Yisley here. So we're on to lesson number 2 in chapter 4, all about writing linear functions. And so in lesson number 2, we're going to put to use that process that we just talked about in lesson number 1 of writing the equation in slope-intercept form. So we're going to take a look at 4 examples here, examples A through D, and we're going to show you how to do it when it's given to you in different forms. So example A says slope equals -3 and y-intercept equals 1/2. All right, so again, remember to write it in slope-intercept form. What we're trying to do is get to y equals mx plus b. Right? And remember, it doesn't necessarily have to be plus, it could be minus b. The m could be negative, but what we're going to do is we're going to fill in the information for m and for b. So I know that y is going to stay the same. So on example A, I'm going to have y equals. Now the m, again, remember that that is the slope. So the slope, they said, was -3. And then that slope is multiplying the x. The x is going to stay the same, so I should have -3x. And then plus whatever the y-intercept is, because remember, B talks about the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept was 1/2, so we would write that as plus, because it's positive, 1/2. So y equals -3x plus 1/2 is the slope-intercept form of this equation of a line, or linear equation. And I know it's not super pretty because we have this 1/2 right here, but that's just sometimes how it works. But the big thing is we have to put the appropriate things in the appropriate places. So in for the slope went -3, in for the y-intercept went 1/2. Because it was positive, that kept that as a plus sign. All right, well, I'd encourage you to try example B on your own, then check your answer with mine. So first thing I see is example B says the slope equals 0 and the y-intercept equals -2. So again, I'm going to start by putting y equals, then my slope was 0, and that is multiplying x, because again, we're using y equals mx plus b. Right? Then the y-intercept was -2, so instead of having a +2, I'm going to have a -2. Now remember, in that process, the very last step, it said to simplify it if necessary. This is one of those ones that can be simplified. And the reason is because anything times 0 is 0. So really, when we have a slope of 0, the x disappears. And the final equation of this would be y equals -2. Because again, it doesn't matter what number I put in for x here, 0 would make it go away. And so all we'd be left with is y equals -2. And those are one of those special case lines that look a very specific way. It's going to be a horizontal line going through the -2 on the y-axis at every spot. All right, well, let's take a look at example C. So I'm going to move this up just a little bit here, and we're going to take a look at that. So example C is giving us a graph. So what I think is really helpful to do here is to first identify 2 points. And I see that right here there's a point at, what is that, -0, because they didn't move left to right, -7. And there's also a point right here at 5, 0. Now those happen to be the y-intercept and the x-intercept, which is helpful. Right? But the first thing I want to do is I want to identify the slope. And so a couple of ways we could do this. We could use our slope formula and we could plug these 2 points in. Right? But when we're given a graph, what we can actually do is we can start at the farthest left point, and then we can move up or down to get to the next right point that we know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the 0, -7. That's a point that I know. That's the farthest left. And I'm going to count up as many as I need to until I'm even with this point right here, the x1. So I know that I'm going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And moving upwards is positive, so that's 7. And then I'm going to move as many points to the right until I hit that point. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 7 and 5. Well, remember that slope is rise over run, or we talked about it as rise/fall over move to the right. So I rose 7. So, and then I moved to the right, I ran 5. So the slope was 7/5. Now I need to know the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept was 0, -7. I can see that, and I already figured out that point. And remember, y-intercept, though it's an ordered pair, we only deal with the y coordinate of it, so -7 is that y-intercept. So now that I know my slope and I know that my y-intercept, I can now plug that into the y equals mx plus b. So I've got y equals, my m, my slope is 7/5, times x, and then plus b. Well, my b is -7, so instead of having plus, I'm going to have -7. And then I always want to check if it can be simplified. I don't need to simplify because it's already in slope-intercept form. Nothing's going away because of any zeros or anything like that. So that would be the answer to example C. All right, well, I'd encourage you to try example D on your own, then check your answer with mine. All right, well, first thing I want to do is I want to identify some points here. Well, I see that my first point I have here is 0 because I didn't move left or right, and then up 3, so 0, 3. And then my next point I have here is 4 to the right, and then not up or down, so 4, 0. Again, that happens to be the y-intercept and the x-intercept. So now I want to figure out my slope of this line. Well, again, we could plug it into the slope formula because we know 2 points, or we could simply start at the farthest left point that we know for sure, and then either rise or fall to get even with the next right point that we know, and then move to the right. And that's what I'm going to do on this one. I'm going to fall 1, 2, 3 until I'm even with it, and falling is negative, so -3. And then I'm going to move 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, and moving to the right is positive. So my slope would be fall -3 over, move to the right, 4. So slope is -3/4 or -3/4. Now my y-intercept, well, we already identified that. It's right here, 0, 3. And with the y-intercept, we really only deal with the y-coordinate, which is +3. All right, well, I've got the 2 pieces of information I need to now write my equation in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to write y equals, my slope was -3/4 times x, and then my y-intercept was +3, so that's going to be a +3. So y equals -3/4 x plus 3 is the final answer. All right, well, if you have any additional questions about this, please let me know, but otherwise you should have what you need to continue on in the chapter.